Hello and welcome to another video of DAX Wednesdays. In this video, we're going to have a look at two DAX functions called MAXA and MINA. Both these DAX functions belong to the aggregation family of DAX functions. Before we move to Power BI for the demonstration, let's have a look at the principle of how these two DAX functions work. A while ago, we had created a video about the MAXX DAX function, and we had made a comparison between max and maxx. Comparing these two DAX functions is like comparing apples and oranges. I would request you to watch that video in order to learn more about maxx. Whereas for maxa, the comparison is a bit different. This time around, we are comparing apples with apples. Both these DAX functions will return to you the maximum of the values that they find in either their column or the two expressions that we provide to them. Now, if you remember, for max, we have two methods in which we can provide the input. Either is to provide them with two functions. It will compare the values of the two and then provide the maximum between the two functions. And then we have another method in which we aggregate the whole column and then find the maximum among all the values in this column. Maxa is similar in that case. It is an aggregator function where it will return to us the maximum value that it finds in a column. The difference between these two is the fact that we cannot have Boolean values, that is true or false values, provided as input for the max function, whereas maxa can accept the Boolean values as input. Max, it can return to us the maximum of the text values provided to it, whereas maxa cannot do that. So there are a few things that max can do which maxa can't, and there are other things that maxa can do which max can't. Therefore, we have this diagram to illustrate the difference between these two DAX functions. Now, one more thing before we move on to Power BI, whatever we say about max and maxa, the same thing applies, the same principle applies to min and min. Let's move to Power BI for the demonstration. So over here in our Power BI report, we have a table visualization with 5 columns. First column being text, second the number with numbers in it, date with dates in it, and then two columns of Boolean 1 and Boolean 2. Now if you remember the diagram that we just saw, max can find us the maximum among these three columns, which is text, number, and date. I've already made a separate video about max DAX function. If you want to have a look at how to use that DAX function, you can watch it by clicking on the link at the top right over here. We're just going to have one example in which we will show the maximum of the date column. So let's put in a new measure called max. We type in max and we provide the column name, which is the table name followed by the column date. All right, so Power BI hasn't returned us any errors, so the measure is fine. Now let's put a card visual over here and we'll select the max DAX function, and it returns to us 6th January, which is the highest among all the dates provided in the date column. Now what happens if I were to change the same DAX function of max with providing the Boolean column instead of the date column? You will see it will return to us an error. The reason is max doesn't accept Boolean values. So what we can do is we'll use maxa. We'll first change the measure's name to maxa, change the DAX function to maxa like this, and you'll see now it has written to us value of 1. So why it has written to us the value 1, although we don't have any value that corresponds to 1 over here? That is because the logical values such as true and false, rows that evaluate to false count as 0, and the rows that evaluate to true, such as the second value over here, they count as 1. Empty cells are ignored. So which means this DAX function maxa, first of all, it has checked all the values in the column Boolean 1. False is 0, true is 1, false again 0, true again 1, false 0, and the last cell it has ignored. So it has a choice between 0 and 1, and it has found us the maximum between the two, which is 1. That's why it has written to us 1. Now if we were to change this to min, you'll see it has written to us 0, which makes sense. False is evaluated as 0. So between 1 and 0, which is the minimum value, it is 0. Now let's see what happens if I were to provide this column, which is Boolean 2, with no values in it. I'll change this to Boolean 2. Min A now has written to us blank, which is nothing but 0. So just remember this difference If there are no value in a cell, that cell will be ignored. And if there are no values in whole column, the value that will be returned for min A and max A will be blank. Now this is min A, which has written to us blank. If I have to change it to max A, you'll see it has written to us blank. Now what happens if I have to change the boolean column to date, which is the third column in our data set? You'll see it has returned to us 6th January, which is the highest among the 6 dates. This means that date values are accepted as inputs. We change this to the number column. Again, the numbers are accepted as input values. If we were to change it to text, what do you think? It will be accepted or not? When we provide the text column, it has written to us the value of 0, whereas it should return to us text. So this is the only shortcoming for max A. It doesn't accept text values. If we want to find out the max between these 6 texts, we need to change this to max, because max is the DAX function that accepts text values. So now you see it has written to me zebra as the highest text among the 6, because it will first of all look at the first alphabet among all the texts, and since between A and Z is the highest, it has written to us zebra. So this is how you can use max A and min A. Remember, text, number and date, they are accepted by max, whereas number, date and boolean are accepted by max A. I just made an additional slide to summarize the differences between max A and max X. I have made 3 separate videos for these DAX functions. With max we can use an aspect called comparison function, in which we compare 2 values A or B, which we can't do with max A or max X. The aggregator function is only applicable to max and max A that we just saw in our demonstration. Max X, whereas it is an iterator function, that's why it has green tick on the 3rd row. Text values are accepted by max and max X, whereas max A doesn't, whereas boolean values are accepted by max A alone. And if we were to talk about the capability of these 3 DAX functions, with max X we can achieve much more than its other siblings, which is max and max A. So that's all for this video. Let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.